All right, welcome to your deep dive. You're ready to go deep. Today, we're diving into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Huge. So, if you're into mindfulness or, just trying to figure out how to not get lost in the crazy town of your own mind, well, you're in the right place, my friend.
Definitely the right deep dive.
Oh, sure. This book, it wasn't just like a normal read for me. It kind of messed with my head in a good way.
Oh, yeah? In what way?
Well, Tolle, he had this crazy awakening experience. He woke up one morning feeling like, get this, a precious diamond.
Wow.
Right. And he suddenly realized there's way, way, way more to light than, what we usually see.
That's a pretty intense aha moment.
Yeah, can you even imagine?
Oh, it's a powerful image for sure. And it really gets at one of the core ideas in the Powers Now that, true joy and peace, they're not something we have to wait for. They're available to us, right now.
Oh, absolutely. But to get to that, I feel like we have to really understand how our minds work,
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting, right? Tolle, he doesn't shy away from the tough questions. Right out of the gate, he hits us with this really intense statement: I cannot live with myself any longer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what kind of inner turmoil was going on for him to even think that?
It's a pretty heavy statement to start a book with.
It is.
But it was actually, that statement that was the drive for his awakening. He realized, wait, if I can't live with myself, there must be two selves here. The I and the self that the I can't deal with.
Right.
So that's how he began to unpack this whole concept of the ego, which he describes as this mind-made self, a false identity we build out of our thoughts.
So it's there's this ego thing, and it's kind of separate from us, not just our thoughts, but something that's creating them. I don't know, it's hard to grasp how something we create in our minds can feel so, separate and powerful.
Yeah, I get that. It's almost think of it like a program running in the background, shaping how we see things, how we react to things.
A program.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Tolle says that 80 to 90% of the thoughts our ego throws at us, they're not helpful. In fact, they can be downright harmful.
You're saying, most of our thoughts are actually working against us?
Pretty much.
No wonder my mind feels like a war zone sometimes.
Yeah, it's common. A lot of people feel that way.
But hold on, is he saying all thinking is bad? We do kind of need our brains to function, right?
Of course, yeah. He's not saying thinking is bad per se. It's more about realizing our mind's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used well or, not so well.
Right.
The trick is to, become aware of the thoughts spinning around in our heads and ask ourselves, are these thoughts really helping me or are they just making things worse?
So we're not our thoughts. It's we can step back, observe what our minds are doing, we're just watching the show.
That's it. You're getting it.
Yeah.
And Tolle believes that when we over-identify with our thoughts, when we believe oh, I am my thoughts, that's when we get trapped in the ego's games. All the fear, desire, suffering.
Oh, I feel that.
Yeah, it's easy to get sucked in.
Totally. So how do we escape this mental trap? How do we break free?
That's where the power of now comes in. Tolle says the key is to shift our attention away from all the mental chatter and into the present moment, what's happening right here, right now, actually happening.
Okay, but that sounds way easier said than done, right? I mean, you're talking to the queen of to-do lists. My mind's going a million miles a minute, 2047. How do we even access this power of the present when our minds are constantly pulling us in every direction?
I hear you. It's a process. And it all starts with, just becoming aware. Think about it.
Yeah.
You just turn your mind off whenever you want.
Oh, no way.
Most people can't.
Yeah.
We often don't even realize we're lost in thought until something snaps us back to reality.
It's true. It's we're on autopilot most of the time, completely clueless about all the stories our minds are making up.
And those stories, they can be filled with, regrets about the past, anxieties about the future.
Tell me about it.
And all that keeps us from actually experiencing the richness of what's happening right now. Tolle calls it living in a state of unconsciousness. We're missing out on life as it unfolds.
It's like walking through a beautiful forest but staring at your phone the whole time. You miss all the amazing things right in front of you.
Exactly. And speaking of things we tend to miss, Tolle also introduces this concept called the pain body. It's imagine an energy field that holds all of our past emotional pain, like a hidden stash of negativity.
Oh, yeah, the pain body. That was a big one for me. It sounds kind of sci-fi, but when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense.
It does.
We all carry that baggage around.
It's true. He describes it as, this entity that can be quiet for a while, then suddenly something triggers it and it just takes over.
It's like you think you know someone really well, and then suddenly they turn into this like monster right in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. And often it's not even anything specific that sets it off. Have you ever noticed, like, you can be feeling fine 1 minute and then bam, a wave of like total negativity just hits you out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh, all the time. Like, especially after a long day, it's like all the stress and frustration I've been holding in just explodes. Could that be the pain body, doing its thing?
It could be. And the tricky part is you can't really fight it head on. Confronting it just creates more conflict.
So what do you do?
The key, according to Tolle, is awareness. Just observe it, without judgment.
So it's like acknowledge the monster's there, but don't let it scare you. See it, but don't give it power.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
And as we bring awareness to it, the pain body, it starts to lose its grip.
Yeah.
Tolle says unconsciousness creates it. Consciousness transmutes it into itself.
Okay, I'm going to have to chew on that one for a bit. But it sounds like we've got a lot to gain by, becoming more conscious of what's happening inside, like both our thoughts and these deeper emotional patterns.
Absolutely. And that's where Tolle's teaching on the power of the present moment becomes so vital. He believes the present moment is the key to unlocking a whole new dimension of experience. It's the gateway to true peace and joy. But there's a catch. He says it's a secret that's not being taught in churches or temples.
Wait, a secret. Why aren't more people talking about this if it's so powerful?
Because, most of us are living in a state of unconsciousness, bouncing back and forth between regrets about the past and worries about the future. We're so stuck in our minds that we miss the richness and aliveness of the present moment.
It's so true. Tolle says it perfectly. Find the narrow gate that leads to life. It's called the now. But how do we actually find that gate? How do we access this power when there are distractions everywhere?
It takes practice. And it takes a willingness to shift our attention away from the constant stream of thoughts and tune into, what we're feeling in the present moment. Like maybe paying attention to our breath, noticing the sensations in our body, or just becoming more aware of our surroundings.
So like hitting the pause button on the mental movie and actually experiencing life in real time.
That's a good way to think about it.
But what about, all the things we need to get done? Isn't there a danger of like becoming passive or unproductive if we're always focused on the present moment?
That's a common concern. But being present doesn't mean we stop taking action or, working towards our goals. Actually, Tolle suggests that when we act from a place of presence, our actions are more aligned with our true purpose.
So it's like finding that balance between being present and taking action, not getting so lost in the doing that we forget to just be.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of surrender comes in, which might be one of the most challenging but also most transformative ideas in the book.
Surrender, that's a tough one. It makes me think of like giving up or admitting defeat. How can we make our lives better or make a difference if we're always surrendering?
Yeah, it's not what it sounds like. Surrender, in the context of what Tolle is talking about, isn't about weakness. It's not about being passive. It's about aligning with the present moment, letting go of the ego's need to control everything, and allowing life to just, unfold as it is.
Okay, that's interesting. I definitely need more on this. It sounds kind of paradoxical. How can surrendering be a source of power?
Right. It's a good question. Tolle uses this analogy. Imagine rowing a boat upstream, against the current. It's exhausting. You're barely making any progress. Surrender is like turning the boat around and letting the current carry you.
That's a great image. So surrender is about trusting the flow of life rather than constantly fighting against it.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And Tolle believes that when we surrender, we tap into this source of energy and wisdom that's, way bigger than anything we could achieve through our own willpower.
Whoa, there's a lot there. I need to think about that some more.
Yeah, it's deep stuff.
Definitely makes me want to explore this idea of surrender more, though.
Well, good, because guess what? That's exactly what we're going to do in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, I can't wait. Welcome back. We're still exploring the power of now. And, last time we were talking about this idea of surrender. It's definitely a concept that, like, kind of messes with our usual, got to make things happen mindset.
It does, yeah. It challenges those ingrained patterns.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine, like, taking that idea of surrender and applying it to, say, relationships.
Okay.
We often go into relationships with, this list of expectations. Like, we want our partners to change in certain ways.
Yeah, for sure.
What if instead we just surrendered to who they are, like right now?
That's a big shift. Like, wouldn't that just lead to like getting walked all over? Surrender sounds kind of passive, like almost like being a doormat.
Right, but it's not about being passive or, letting yourself be mistreated. Remember, surrender is about aligning with the present moment, letting go of that need to control. In relationships, that means letting go of our idealized image of our partner and accepting them, flaws and all.
So instead of trying to like force them into a certain mold, we accept them as they are. It's
Yeah.
about acceptance rather than like trying to force change.
Exactly. And that acceptance, it creates space for real connection and growth. When we let go of those judgments and expectations, we can actually see the other person more clearly, appreciate them for who they truly are.
Oh, I like that. So surrender in relationships is like choosing love over the ego's need to be right or in control.
Got it.
That's powerful. It makes you realize how much conflict comes from like that very need to control.
So much conflict comes from that. And that love that Tolle talks about, it's not just some fleeting emotion. It's a state of being, a recognition of, that shared essence that connects us all.
Oh, that reminds me of something else from the book that really stood out to me, the part about like the transformative potential of illness. It's not something we usually think of as, spiritually positive, but Tolle presents it in a whole new way.
It's a deep insight. Illness has this way of shaking us out of our routines, forcing us to face our own mortality.
Right. Makes you think about what really matters.
Exactly.
Like it makes you reevaluate your priorities.
Yeah. When we're faced with the possibility of losing everything, we often gain a new appreciation for the present moment, for the preciousness of life.
It's almost like a wake-up call. Like, hey, pay attention. What are you holding on to so tightly, both physically and emotionally?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So even when we're facing suffering, there's still an opportunity for growth, for awakening. It's not about pretending the pain's not there, right? But recognizing that we're not the pain, we're something more.
You're getting it. Tolle says that suffering is due to identification with form. When we realize our true nature is, this formless consciousness, then we can experience peace, even in difficult situations.
It's like, realizing the storm's raging all around you, but there's this like calm, still center inside you, and that stays untouched.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
And that leads us to another thought-provoking concept, conscious death.
Okay, here we go.
Tolle talks about the possibility of, dying consciously, being fully present in the moment of death, rather than giving in to fear.
I'll be honest, that one's a little hard to like wrap my head around. It sounds kind of, a bit scary. But I am curious, is he saying we can actually choose how we experience death?
It's more about approaching death with, awareness, acceptance, rather than seeing it as this enemy. Tolle suggests that, at the moment of death, this portal can open to a realm of pure consciousness.
So even in death, there's this possibility of like liberation.
It's definitely a mind-bending concept, and it connects back to, Tolle's main message. Enlightenment isn't some far-off goal. It's available right now, in this moment. We just need to shift our perception.
Right. He uses that analogy of the world being like a molecular energy dance, and our perception of that dance shapes our reality. Like we have more power than we think.
Yes. We're not just, passive observers. Our consciousness has an influence, and that's both empowering and a little daunting. It means we have the power to transform our lives, but also the responsibility for the reality we create.
So if our perception shapes reality, what happens when we, shift our perception to the present moment, to that awareness of being that Tolle is always talking about? Like, what kind of world could we create if we all, like, collectively embrace this power?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive. We're going to delve into Tolle's vision of a world transformed by consciousness, where, work disappears from our vocabulary and surrendered action becomes the norm.
That sounds like a world I want to be a part of.
Me too.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the power of now. I feel like we've covered a lot. The ego, the pain body, surrender, even like conscious death.
We have. It's a lot to process.
It is. But here's the big question, right? How do we actually bring all of this into our everyday lives? Like, what does it look like to live in the power of now?
Yeah, that's the real challenge. And, Tolle suggests that it's not just about, feeling better or being happier. He actually thinks it might be crucial for the survival of humanity.
Whoa, for survival?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big claim. Is he saying that, like, the way we're living now is actually, like, unsustainable.
Well, he makes a pretty compelling argument. Think about all the problems we're facing in the world. Conflict, environmental damage, social divisions, all of that. Tolle argues that those are all symptoms of like a collective ego that's out of control.
Right.
Fear, greed, the need to control everything. Those patterns are driving so much of our behavior. Okay, I can see how that ties into the ego's patterns that we talked about before. But does he think we all need to like become monks and go live in caves to save the world? Because I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
No, not at all. It's not about, escaping from the world. It's about bringing awareness into every aspect of our lives. Even, the simple stuff. Remember he talks about like feeling your inner body even when you're doing something really basic.
Right, right.
It's like maintaining that connection to the stillness inside no matter what's happening around you.
So finding that stillness, even in the middle of the chaos, like it's a secret weapon against like all the stress of everyday life.
Exactly. And imagine if more people started doing that,
Yeah.
tapping into that power. We might actually see a shift away from this culture that's obsessed with doing, toward a culture that values just being.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is.
And Tolle actually says he thinks the word work might even disappear from our vocabulary. Yeah. Like we'll need to come up with a new word for it when it becomes, infused with the joy of being.
That's a wild thought. What would it be like if our work wasn't just this source of stress and struggle, but like an expression of, our creativity and connection to something bigger?
It's amazing. And all of this, like, it goes back to surrender.
Right.
It's about taking action, but doing it from a place of alignment, trusting that, deeper intelligence that Tolle talks about.
Exactly. Surrendered action. Letting go of the ego's need to control every outcome and allowing ourselves to be guided by, something wiser. It's like we become instruments,
Yeah.
playing our part in this like grand symphony.
It's making so much more sense now. We're not just these like isolated individuals all fighting for our own little piece of the pie. We're all interconnected, part of this incredible web of life.
And that's where the true power is. When we wake up to that reality, when we remember that our true nature is being, everything changes. Our relationships become more authentic, our work becomes more meaningful, our lives are filled with a deeper sense of purpose.
It's a huge shift in perspective, but it's also incredibly hopeful. What would you say is the biggest takeaway for you from the power of now? What really stands out?
I think for me, it's the reminder that true happiness doesn't depend on what's happening around us. It's not about getting more stuff or achieving some big goal. It's about awareness. It's about being present.
Right.
It's not chasing after some future state of perfection. It's about discovering that the treasure we're looking for, it's already here within us.
That is so well said. And it's what makes Tolle's work so powerful. He's not giving us a set of rules or beliefs to follow. He's giving us a path to self-discovery, a way to tap into the peace and joy that are always available right now.
He's pointing us towards a different way of seeing reality, one that's based on love and connection, not fear and separation.
And that reality, it's not some far-off dream. It's something we can experience right now, in this moment, if we choose to wake up to it.
That's the key, the choice to awaken.
It is. And one of the most mind-bending things Tolle says is that even space and silence, like, they don't really exist.
Right.
Because they don't, quote, stand out. It's like he's challenging us to question everything we think we know about reality. Like, if those basic concepts aren't what they seem, what else are we getting wrong?
Wow.
Right. That's a really good question.
It is.
And it's a great question to leave our listeners with as we wrap up this deep dive.
It is. It makes you think.
It does. And it's an invitation to, pick up the power of now and explore it for yourself. Who knows? Maybe it'll spark an awakening in you too. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.